from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me, Sam Rad. Sam, she's a bestseller author. She's a futurist and much, much more. But the way I love to do it, as the audience knows by now, I like to keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, to tell us a little bit more about their background, their journey, and where are you currently up to, Sam? And then we can take the conversation from there. So the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for having me, Mehmet. I mean, this is, the introduction is kind of a long thing. I feel like I could talk for the whole time about this. So hi, I'm Sam Rad. I'm a futurist, not a name I gave myself. It was a name that over the years, or I suppose a title that I was quite early in a number of emerging technologies and building or inventing some things, and habitually like 10 to 15 years too early. Not so great from the perspective of a founder, but great from the perspective of helping people to build towards the future. My background is a bit unique in terms of I have a mix, I guess, of left and right brain. I was trained as an anthropologist, so basically a professional people watcher, lots of people skills, but also a self-taught engineer from, the age of maybe, I wouldn't say 4 years old as an engineer, but I was working with computers quite young. So, when I was younger in undergrad, so, in my studies, I was studying people, right, as an anthropologist, but it was right at this time where the cusp of mobile phones and social networks. And I really wanted to study the impacts of technology on people, which at the time was like a crazy thing to do. It was not approved by any departments, nothing in graduate school, etc. I did it anyway. So I was one of the first anthropologists to live fully in a virtual world called Second Life. This was in 2008 or 2009. Ended up starting a company around that time. 4 companies later, I was kind of still on very early in a number of things. Happened to be one of the first people to robustly deepfake myself, and not just in terms of what you're seeing here, like my voice and my likeness, but also, my cognition. So, I did that a little bit ahead of the curve, which was quite freaky, a bit uncanny. And I've slowly over time accumulated these experiences that, I suppose for other people, this presentation or this title, which, I'm kind of averse to the idea of titles, but, as a futurist being quite early, not just about thinking about the future, but actually having a background building with emerging technologies, as well as experimenting or kind of using myself as an example to be on the cutting edge. So I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Same here, Sam. And, I call people like yourself, maybe futurists. Some people, they take it in another sense, but I would say forward looking.
Yeah.
And people who can, spot, what's happening. And, we can talk about a lot of things, but of course I did like my research and I went through the work you've been doing. But one theme attracted me, honestly, because, even in my discussions with friends and people I meet all the time, there's something which I know you call it also the age of acceleration, right? So now you just mentioned AI, you mentioned a couple of other emerging technologies, and we are kind of feeling that really the acceleration that we're seeing now, and always, I'm kind of like, I have gray hair, right? So like I tell people, I've seen multiple, I would say, revolutions in tech, and each one was like, had the wow effect. Yeah, like this is the next big thing. But now we have this really acceleration with AI, quantum. So um, the question that comes to mind, and because you've done some work over there, I'm going to talk also about the book shortly. How do you think we can keep up without, losing ourselves, I would say?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of what ended up being the topic of the book, right? And like you, I have been through a handful of these trends, and every time, there is an emerging technology, the marketers, right, love to position it as like, this is the next thing, it's going to change the world. And we went from like IoT to blockchains to metaverses to whatever, AI, generative AI, quantum computing. I think biotechnology is also a really big deal, and even more. And I myself was part of the people that would stand on stages for the past 10 years saying this is a radical shift in what I call our social operating system. So changing everything from even our inner awareness to our communities, to our organizations, to societies and beyond. And, you know, I will say, first of all, I don't proclaim to be able to name an entire epoch. So it's not like I set out to coin this age of acceleration. And actually, there have been a few folks, namely Thomas Friedman, many years ago, who kind of referred to something sort of similar as an age of accelerations, plural. But really, what I was getting at is that at this moment in time, right, the convergence of technologies coming together, as you mentioned, AI, quantum computing, spatial computing, VR, AR, robotics, biotechnology, I could list 1,000 of them, will come together in ways that lead to an emergence of second and third order effects that we could not foresee. In the same way, I'll use an analogy of when we went from analog to digital in the internet revolution, and Google Maps. So Google opened up location data, and then all of a sudden people are building on top of location-based services, and we see like $1 trillion economy unlocked of, Uber and Airbnb and all these, the sharing economy. But when, let's say, Henry Ford invented the Model T or created the Model T, the automobile, in like 1903 or 1904, I don't think people were like, oh, we have an automobile. I'm going to foresee we need infrastructure, and we're going to have roads, and we're going to have, charging plates in the roads for electric vehicles. And then those vehicles are going to drive themselves with artificial intelligence and spatial computing, but we need them to communicate. So we're going to create 5G networks, through the air. So if you're right in 1900, people were like, this is not a horse. Wow. So we're at this moment again where, I guess a lot of people would expect someone like me, or a futurist, a forward thinker, someone with strategic foresight or vision, to be able to tell you what that 100 years from now looks like, from the automobile to self-driving, self-charging, autonomous vehicles. And to some extent I can, but, due to the nature and the power of these specific technologies. So again, artificial intelligence, machine learning, but combined with quantum computing, combined with all the things that are happening in terms of the emergence of perhaps new species, whether we're talking about bioengineering or we're talking about robotics, or other autonomous entities, drones, automobiles, etc. There will be an emergence of things that I think we couldn't possibly foresee. So my job, right, and a lot of what I worked on in this book, which I changed the subtitle last minute. It was originally something related to the operating system of the future, what I've been saying for years, or something about thriving in the age of acceleration. But I changed it to reclaiming your humanity in a post-human world, because the through line really was this question, right? How do we stay centered? How do we stay present? How do we stay adaptable? And to me, it actually seems like less about technology and more about staying human in the face of all of these technological augmentations, which these, what I call essential human skills, are things that we've become a bit disconnected from, whether we're talking about creativity and critical thinking, so left and right brain activities or just plain discernment of making sense of our reality, whether it's our digital reality, is what you're watching right now actually me, or is it my deep fake? I assure you it's not. This is 100% certified, authentic Sam Rad. But, these questions of how do we stay human are some big ones. And it really is now a process of reconnecting to our center and then staying adaptable. I give speeches on stages around the world. I've been doing this for about a decade, and often the context for which is, of course, it's optimistic. It's how do we leverage and thrive through this change. But over the past couple of years, it's started to shift to, there's a bit of hesitancy or fear, and there are questions coming up like, what will this mean for my role, my job, or my entire company, or my entire industry? Will it exist? And, I'm not a liar. So, I have this problem where I kind of, will tell the truth. And in some contexts, the answer is no, right? But that doesn't mean we will not have purpose, we will not have passion, we will not have things to do. It means there will be an emergence of entirely new systems. But what makes this a bit destabilizing is that, this would have been something that was big if we talk about 2008, right, where cracks in the financial system we started to see. And so the idea of kind of creating an initiative or people working towards greater efficiencies in finance, whether we're talking on the cryptocurrency side or Bitcoin, the emergence of Bitcoin, or decentralized finance or other tools. Now, that's a big endeavor in and of itself. But when I share with people, okay, it's not just finance, it became everything, right? From medicine to healthcare to education to knowledge to media. You can look at that as like, oh my goodness, everything is crumbling, or you could look at it like this is a really incredible opportunity in human history to build again, not rebuild from the ground up, but really apply first principles to pretty much every social operating system that we have. And think like an innovator, think like an entrepreneur, think like a technologist.
I'm like you're like, I feel like as if I'm talking to myself a little bit here for multiple reasons. Because on the last point, usually what I used to do is I used to write an article at the end of the year. Just, I put my thoughts on what we saw, last year and what I'm expecting. So this year I decided to record the video, and this is like almost exactly the same. I said like what was happening currently with this acceleration, and I love the word acceleration because it's better than, rapid growth and rapid changes. It's acceleration. And I said like, what I believe, me included, we need to do is they used to tell us this in trainings years ago, like, yeah, you need to unlearn and learn again.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, which I always ask people now, because I remember even when I started not so long back with the podcast, the traditional question, when, for example, let's say I have someone who's experienced in blockchain, I would ask him or her, hey, like, what do you think are the trends in the coming 10 years or 5 years? Now I stopped asking this question, honestly, because although like you're a futurist, but I mean, first we need to, I would say, like, swallow what's happening around us. And this what brought, this question now to me is, are we ready? I mean, for me as a technologist and being like in technology for almost all my career, and even when I was kid, like, I was like close to electronics and all this thing, but I never saw something that fast. And the reason why I love the word acceleration, because if you look, for example, at the rate of adoption for the internet, or let's say smartphones, or let's say, all these techs that came in the previous decades. So it took like probably 3, 4, 5 years until we have this mass adoption. AI today, and of course, we still didn't talk about like quantum, we didn't talk about like many other things, space tech. So Sam, what do you think as humans, we need to do at this moment to, I'd say, adopt this fast change?
I call this learning to surf, honestly. Just because I joke around, I say it's the rad wave, but okay, so if you were, I don't like surfing. I tried it once and I got pummeled. So I think we can all relate to it. I don't know. I've done a lot of extreme things. I used to be a competitive skydiver, but when it comes to the ocean, I was like, I don't know, I'm going to drown. But it kind of feels like this experience where we're like, you're in the water and there's this gigantic wave coming towards you. And you don't really have a choice. I mean, you can go under it, but if you're going to fight the wave, you're going to get pummeled. So it's more this process of like the wave's coming. It's very big. I mean, the wave's here. We're all on it. And we're going to learn to surf it. And that requires, right? You don't get rigid when you surf. You don't turn into like, a wall for the wave to hit. You kind of relax and soften and flow. And that is a very different mindset, especially as a technologist, especially as a more left-brained global society. I'd say post-enlightenment and thinking and Renaissance, scientific revolution, we started moving way towards logic. And I talk a bit about this in the book. It's not to say in favor of the more kind of flowy, receptive, creative right brain that we should kind of swing the pendulum totally on that other side, or those skills would have maybe been called soft skills as opposed to hard skills, and they were a bit deprioritized because they just didn't really fit into the operating system of the post-industrial revolution. But now that we've gotten to a point where, again, these technologies coming together are, I wouldn't say replacing the hard skills, but they're certainly augmenting them in ways where actually the way to keep up is not keep up at all. It's to ride that wave of change. And in order to do that, I think actually a lot of the right brain skills are necessary for us to reconnect with. So it might not be the answer. It's not like I have the 5-step process to be prepared for accelerating change. I'm in it too. And to be honest, a story I'll sometimes share. So I mentioned like I habitually have been quite early. And this didn't work so much in terms of the career of some of my companies. They're still operating, but they were just certainly like 10 years ahead, probably more like innovation departments. But, working with tools and technologies or being privy to them before I'd say like general public for most of my career, I feel like I've processed or experienced things and continue to do before the mainstream will. So in 2020, which obviously coincides with a lot of other global happenings that we all recall, probably not fondly, I was the CEO or brought in to be the CEO of a video communication platform that was working with a handful of technologies across generative AI, anything from video to speech to text, pretty much everything we're seeing starting to come out now, which is when I was tinkering, which is when I kind of robustly like had the finished product of this 10-year process of creating Sam Rad AI, which could be here right now, in my place, like at that level of fidelity. And honestly, it freaked me out. I had a bit of an existential crisis, and it wasn't because I was afraid of replacing myself. That's one thing I have done in my career, and I would encourage people to do, is make yourself redundant. As a startup founder or any sort of thing, you want to create a resilient organization, but so many of us get caught up once the organization is larger, or you're in corporate, right? And we tend to like kind of want to protect ourselves and not want to make ourselves redundant. But I've kind of gotten very comfortable with doing that. So even so, I make this replica and I say, oh my goodness, like I speak for a living at this point. I write books. I write books because I love to write and it's my creative practice, but I also write books as part of my living. I, join podcasts, I host podcasts, I'm on video, I'm on stages, and to create something or someone that could do that on my behalf at first was it was like seeing yourself in a mirror I didn't want to see. And it was a bit of like an ego shattering, ego death type thing. I got rid of all of my technology at that point in time. I was like, I'm done with with this. And over the course of, a year or two, it came back where I felt the passion to be part of this, this wave, and to work with people as we're navigating it. Because again, I'm not just someone who sees something or has like plotted 5 trends by asking Chat GPT, what are the 5 trends happening in the future? Everyone's a futurist now these days. They can be. It's more like from the emotional, psychological, very integrated human perspective of feelings. What does that feel like, that change? Not just what logically is happening. I've been there. I'm right there as well. And, to be able to navigate that is very counterintuitive. But it really is kind of shifting out of this mindset of believing that we can simulate and strategize the infinite simulated possibilities of what could happen and then control that outcome. Because I don't really think that we would be able to do that. And when you throw in quantum computing, which of course could process all of those possible simulated outcomes, but it also could generate infinite possible new outcomes. So, if we're sitting here and being like, I could see 5 years from now, I would be lying to you. But I can see some things that are probably likely to happen.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I think, I tell people, when it comes especially to some of the philosophical aspects of, the tech evolution or acceleration, as you call it, Sam. So people are too much in the tech itself. So I'm not sure if it's on purpose or because the majority of us, and I don't want to generalize, but I had even these discussions with very well-known, I would say, practitioners in their domain who are using the technology now. And every time I see, the next, thing that they uncovered because they are using this technology, I ask a question and I ask myself also. Now, and I know that you have done it also in the book. So, are we going to be detached from us being humans? And I know, like you call it, something about the post-human world. So, and it's like really, and some people they say, hey, like you kind of acting like a philosopher here. It's not, because for me, I gotta tell you my point of view, and I would love to hear yours. So for me, all these advancements that we are seeing in technology, as humans, we're not ready for it. But uh, same as it happened with the internet and later start to happen with the smartphones, the social media was the biggest, I would say. All of a sudden you put technology and communication, let's say, in hands of the masses. And I think people till now, they don't know what actually they are doing. So they scroll, they post nonsense things. But now we reach with AI, and AI is not like something small, it's something really big. So are we detaching ourselves from being humans? Are we becoming machines? So for me, I'm saying it like the way that, and funny enough, I was just telling, my dad the other day, uh, I said, like, I think we gotta go back and become farmers at some stage because, this is what we used to do years ago. So I would love to hear your point of view.
It's such a loaded question, right?
Sorry for that.
No, it is. We have to be philosophical. I mean, there's so many, because if we don't ask these questions, we're not going to start asking questions that relate to ethics or governance or ownership of the systems, or how should we build them. We just build. And, you mentioned blockchain. I was very early in building infrastructure in that, which is now an industry, but let's just say when it was still just kind of like a newer tech. And, everyone's like, we'll figure out governance and stuff later, or the network will handle it the way that it's designed. And I think punting these questions is very dangerous. But so on the transhumanism or post-human question, I mean, I do put this in the book, and I say when people ask if will we be cybernetically enhanced? Will we have, change our bodies to have mechanical or technological devices, I show them this. I think majority of, at least, I mean, I don't know the statistics of smartphones in the world as of 2025, but it is quite high. And I'd say where I am in the United States, it's a large majority. And the percentage of the amount of time, the younger generations that are spent on these devices over 8 hours a day, we're already there. And the design of these networks, you joke that you don't think people know what they're doing. They don't. They're designed for certain purposes, which is mainly extracting data from people for either advertisers or now for training purposes of AI models or other things. And we've all kind of opted in to being cognitively hijacked. Our dopamine, if we're talking about actual neuroscience and human stuff of the way that this works, that process of kind of detachment already began. And then now, we're here, we're spending a lot of our time in virtual environments, and the interfaces, which is a big change. It's not just talking about the technologies we've mentioned, but the interfaces that we use to engage with technology are getting closer to in or on the body. So right now, of course, I've got a computer, I've got a camera, I've got a microphone, I've got headphones, right? I kind of have a very rudimentary immersive experience into our little metaverse bubble here. But as we put the earbuds or in-ear monitors in, which, in New York City, I walk around and I don't think I've seen, people look at you if you're crazy, if I smile at them or like talk to them, because they're in a different world, and even go into the market or grocery store with the headphones on and glasses on. So as these interfaces change, right, and we augment our vision, our hearing, we'll probably be communicating not through our mouths and, through microphones in the earbuds, but, a number of companies, whether it's Neuralink or Meta, trademarking concepts like telepathy, and not, telepathy in the metaphysical sense, but telepathy in terms of probably reading brain waves and somehow translating those and sending them to the recipient party. We're moving into kind of, I wouldn't say, uncharted territory, but also a kind of dangerous place where if we're not careful as individuals and we continue to just willingly opt into these cybernetic enhancements, we could lose the connection that we have to our fundamental humanity. Now, the question is the fundamental humanity necessary? What makes us human? What makes us conscious? What makes us, all these very big existential questions. We don't have the answers to these questions. Philosophers over time, right? I mean, I start the book with a chapter on consciousness, then identity, then perception, and we get wider and wider in scope. But the reason I started within is what is consciousness? What is real? What does it mean to be human? Only then we can really start asking questions of, are we still human when we change? Bioengineering has created 50 different subspecies. Are we still human when some of us have opted into brain machine interfaces and don't speak out of our mouths anymore? Are we still human when we've augmented ourselves to be different life forms that can thrive on Mars or in an environment in space as opposed to on this planet? Those are very big questions. And I'm not one to say we should or shouldn't be doing this. I do think that we should think about what we're doing. And the risk with this acceleration, the age of acceleration, is that it's moving so quickly that I don't think any of us really have time to think about if we should or shouldn't. And I will say it just is an inevitability that these things are happening. I myself, so I mentioned to you that I, after my little existential realization as well, did have that initial impulse to, I kind of disappeared into the Amazon jungle doing actual anthropologist stuff, right? Not studying technology. It was like, okay, it's time to actually study and meet, preserved cultures and different things. And that was lovely. I do believe that, you know, integrating into the changing society is important, but we will probably see a bifurcation, sort of like the Luddites, you know, during the Industrial Revolution, of people who are like opposed to working with or using any of the tools. People, you know, there is a resurgence of off-grid living or homeschooling or new systems. And then I think there will be like the urban environments that are absolutely technologically enhanced and on the cutting edge. Like probably, are you in Dubai? I don't even know.
Yes.
Are you? Okay. So, you know, like kind of more in line with a place like where you live, which, you know, is a relatively new city in the scheme of human history, or places like Singapore, or even the cities that have not been built yet that are being planned. And, you know, there will be like those, which will be, you know, the future. And then I think there are people who will want to reconnect or regenerate land or move back into things like farming. The question is, will it still be possible? You know, will the systems allow for that? You know, will we be able to do it? I don't know. But
Time will show us, of course. You
yeah,
cannot
yes.
predict. Yeah, but because, the reason I stop a lot and I discussed it a lot on the podcast and outside of the podcast, um, humans tend sometime to, when there's a big change, so they play on the fears, right? So
Mm,
the fears that people can start to, accumulate because of big changes. Now, in my opinion, and although like I'm an engineer by trade, but I was too much into history back in the days and still till now. So one of the things that I try to find kind of a relation is between acceleration again in technology or like events, and for example emergence of new empires, emergence of new trend within humanity. But I don't think I was able to find something which is similar to what we're living today, because to your point, now we are able almost to do anything which, if you just ask someone not so long back, I'm not saying 100 years ago, probably maybe 30 years ago, they would say, hey, like this is really not realistic, right? But what we're seeing today is completely different. Now, to your point about how we're gonna act, what one of the things that, Sam, I'm interested to hear the opinion of people about is also from economical aspects, right? So if the machine or machines are able to perform almost all of our tasks that we do on daily basis, and I'm talking here about work and jobs and fulfilling almost things that we're doing it for years, but now the machine can go and do it in fraction of the time. Some people, they think, we will be heading to kind of a what they call it, the unified income system or universal income system. Some people, they say no, like still people who actually like the big enterprise will kind of leverage this, and slavery will come back again. And we have like these two poles, I would say, because you followed this and you did like the other stuff like the anthropology and all these things, and I'm sure in the book maybe you reflected on future of us, not only about what we are capable to do, actually what we will be doing, like, right? It's not like about like, are we able to, let's say, go and live on Mars, or are we going to be, what are we going to be doing in the future? This is I think the question. And is this so-called today jobs with still something in the future?
No, I mean, all the jobs of today will certainly not exist. They will exist differently, just like the jobs of the Industrial Revolution are slowly being phased out. You know, I like, so for me at this point, it is there. I have been an entrepreneur my whole life. So I never worked for anyone. I've always just created things. And maybe I was a little ahead on that game of just understanding constant uncertainty. Um, And now what I do, like in terms of my life, feels like the retirement career of a politician. Honestly, it's like I like give speeches, like and write books, like and it's weird. And I am honest with myself of nothing lasts forever. Um, I don't know how long that. I mean, I think since the dawn of human history, people have wanted and needed storytelling. But that's just me and my own reflection for anyone listening to this. I think that entrepreneurship or innovation or self-directed anything is a fundamental human right. I think it's like the lifeblood of many countries or places or cities to be able to want to improve yourself or to take something that has not existed and to create. I think that is a fundamental human like gift, actually. If we're getting into more spiritual or something, like this is a very beautiful thing, creation. And I think disintermediating that in some sort of process, let's say, like I understand the economic implications and the fear that by addressing that fear, there could be this idea of perceived quick fix of let's give everyone a universal basic income. I've not actually formed my thoughts so much on this, so I wouldn't hold me to these ideas in 5 years if they've evolved. But it to me, that seems like a band-aid in a system that is a past system, right? So we've got this kind of current global order, current global economy, and the quick fix would be giving everyone what they need to continue participating and feeding a past system. I don't know if these systems survive this shift. They certainly are evolving from a geopolitical perspective, multipolar world, all this stuff. So economy as well, I don't know how that plays out, but I do think that the solution needs to be more robust than simply or at least the long-term solution than saying, here's money so you can still buy, eat and survive and then sit around twiddling your thumbs. Like, what does that lead to? I think we need to feel inspired to say, well, what are our purpose or passion? What are we going to do and continue to create and build? So I would probably create a system that incentivizes the creation of new businesses, new investment into new businesses, new industries. I mean, look, certain things from the past will not exist, but if we talk about all the cool things we can build for the future, there are infinite jobs. First of all, a transition job, everyone should go into cybersecurity today. That is at least one industry that has such a lacking of talent that, if you're a technologist and you're looking to reskill or upskill or unlearn, that is like hands down getting into that, or cognitive security. But beyond that, if we're saying, okay, we can build, rebuild energy grids and get into nuclear power, new thing. I mean, there's just like so much.
Right.
So I would say, like you said, it's an unlearning. It's even an unlearning of what was a past career. What did you do before? Does it really matter? Or is it the skills and the learning how to unlearn and learn, and being prepared for a future where we probably will all have so many different jobs, careers, lifetimes in one lifetime.
Right. I think you call it in the book the deprogramming from old operating systems, right? So,
Yeah.
which I like this because it's like, back in the days we used to format computers and, like installing new operating systems on them. So it's like something very similar. But when it comes to spirituality, by the
Mm.
way, again, my feeling is, we're not ready. I mean, in a sense, not because we lack the will to be ready, but again, I put it on the acceleration ratio that we are seeing currently. Because again, maybe I'm repeating myself. I go and compare, and usually this is what when you have the mentality of an engineer, so you go and try to see like if there is a formula where you can relate things, so you can calculate future value.
Yeah.
The thing is, let's take AI again, because it's the most, thing that everyone is hearing about today. So now every day we have something new. Like in the age of internet, maybe people needed to wait, I don't know, months, years until they see something which is disrupted by internet. As you said, analog business going to digital. And then, the smartphone, it took some time until, we start to make an app for everything. But it was a journey. Now we have more technology, in my opinion, than the human brain is capable to see where I can fit these technologies in. I spoke to physicians, I spoke to medical doctors, I spoke to a lot of people, and they keep telling me, hey, like we have a lot of problems to solve, but the problem we are having this, massive new findings, new technologies that are coming out, and we are not able now to focus. So back to the spirituality thing, I think even people, not all of the people, they are thinking about it. But in your opinion, Sam, like if I want to take it like a little bit spiritual, right?
Yeah.
And, because always we speak, and especially for an entrepreneur like yourself, you know it very well. And I tell like people who want to go and take this path, I ask them always the same question. What's your purpose? What's your
Yeah.
passion? Right? So now, again, with this post-human era that we just discussed it, what would be the spirituality here?
So I also ask that question of people. It's a good way to learn a lot about them. And that's actually the most important thing that all of us should be aligning to in the future. That's it. For me, it is a bit spiritual, or religious or whatever. I mean, I don't talk about that often, especially as a technologist. It's not really something that I think for a long time uh, would coincide with rational thought. So, I wouldn't be on stage talking about these things. But when I do say kind of, for me, understanding my purpose or passion, and those are two related, but somehow unrelated concepts at the same time. There are a million things that I could be doing, like any of us. But I spend a lot of time, I have a great gift in my life, the way that it's designed to have a lot of time in quiet introspection or meditation or thought or prayer, whatever you want to call it. And I listen a lot, whether it's inner and just whether it's signs in my body or signs in things that I can kind of see, feel aligned or misaligned, or business partnerships, you can kind of just know. And that's part of, again, these human skills. So I've actually mentioning the book that you've read. I've just finished writing the next book after that because I just kept going. And it kind of got into these questions of reconnect, like how do you actually reconnect to your passion, your purpose, your authenticity? And it's really, it isn't simple, but it kind of is. It's not some secret knowledge. It's sort of, reconnect with the body and the emotions, psychology, your cognition, your intuition. So again, it might not be a simple answer for people for me to say, here's 5 steps to find your passion and purpose. I think that is sort of a much deeper, personal, intimate question that people will have with themselves or their belief systems. For me, I've spent a lot of time in my life fighting my purpose. No, I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm quite a introverted person. And yet I end up on stages in front of thousands of people and I don't get nervous. It's clear from my passion. Like I can feel I'm meant to be doing it because I feel centered and alive, but it would not make logical sense to anyone who's ever met me or known me that my life played out this way. And it makes it clear that it's probably I'm where I need to be, but I was fighting it for so long. I definitely didn't want to step into some of these things. So again, I think in this age of acceleration, right? And you're mentioning all the distractions, those distractions, whether they're intentional or not by the creators of such distractions, there's a lot, right? Even if we're talking about the 24/7 news cycle, and it's not just now one 24/7 news cycle, it's like every algorithmic social media and media metaverse of like what is even really happening in the world. I wouldn't say ignore it all, because we do have to work, with the technologies and tools, but it's discernment. It's understanding which ones, when, and how. Myself, I of course have to be on the cutting edge. I do work with all this stuff, but I also take like 3-month breaks, and I haven't brought a lot of things into my workflow. It takes a long time for me to really integrate something and decide consciously if I want to, and how to leverage it in a way that's going to be beneficial. I'm kind of like the reluctant futurist, or the Luddite futurist, I'm a little bit more offline than people would expect. But, the passion and the purpose will come to you through stillness and silence. And yet we're in a world that is moving faster and faster each day, and it's louder and louder each day. So that's the challenge of how to create that space, even just for a breath. I'm not saying people quit your jobs and go take 6 months living in a cave. Not many of us can do these types of things, but you can take a walk for 5 minutes in between a meeting. You can make a special time of your day, or even in the shower, to just, bring it back inward, or not have some sort of stimulation, whether it's like, podcasts are great. Keep listening to podcasts. I will plug for podcasts, but no, we do fill, we have the tendency to fill time. As I mentioned, walking on the streets of New York City or any major city. It's like people stop before they cross, waiting for the light, and the first thing they do, that for 2 minutes. I do it. I mean, I know I'm not, no finger pointing. I have my headphones in, I'm listening to music, and the times where it's nothing, just complete, fasting, basically. Like, we need to fast. Fasting with food is also good. I mean, it will bring you closer to that. So I would encourage more of that.
Right. I think one of the, if you want to call it skill, you want to call it something else, doing filtering for, not only distractions from phones or like from our computers, because I don't like to call it noise, but it's becoming kind of noise from even people who are around you, like, your colleagues, your family, because everyone is talking about, for example, a topic, and all of a sudden you see yourself dragged to go and, let me go and see what's happening, right? I think I am able to control myself still, to filter a lot of noise that comes. And because I know exactly, for example, let's say I'm in tech, I'm, in entrepreneurship, I'm in startups and so forth. So I like as much as I can to keep the distraction away from me, although like it's not sometimes all possible. But yeah, so the techniques that you gave, and I like, Sam, when you mentioned like it's not like the five steps, or like these 5 things you have to do, because I'm telling people again, like, these playbooks, whatever you want to call them, they're not applicable anymore all the time. So I like to call it best practices for yourself, customized for yourself. So this is what can I work in the future. I'm a big believer in this. And things are changing very fast. But I want to come back to something which we started with. For you now, Sam, what is radical? I know like you call the book Radical Shift, but what is radical for you?
Well, radical reconnection is what I get to at the end. And it's a shame we live in a world where the concept of reconnecting to ourselves and to each other, to, nature, our environment, to all beings and all these things, to, our belief systems, that is a concept that would be considered radical, but it requires that level of, a catalyst to do it, because we are becoming and have become so fundamentally disconnected. So, for me, actually, radical. And that was just a play. The next book actually is called Radiant Now, A Futurist Guide to Thriving in the Present. So you'll be the first to hear that title. We've got Radical next and Radiant Now. It's a bit
Nice.
of, yeah, I know. I just play on my name, which is Rad. So Radical is really just a play on the name. Honestly, it was to, how do you say like edgy future? And if we're thinking about, we've got these like crazy things happening in the future, but the most radical thing of all is being present in a world that is pulling us away from ourselves, right? Whether we're disconnecting or too connected to all these distractions around us, it is to find your passion and your purpose and to reconnect to your humanity. So, um, it's, I'm excited for what's to come in this world. I am an insatiably curious person, and I think if many of us like can continue to tap into our childlike wonder and our curiosity, that all of the things that are happening, whether it's technological change or it's other types of changes and shifting in the world, it doesn't have to be so scary, right? We can look at it and say, well, this is kind of a very interesting exploration or journey. Some of it will be messed up. I'm not going to say it's all, I'm not like naive in the sense that it's all going to be fine. Some stuff will not be fine, but you individually, anyone listening to this will be okay. And to do that, really coming back to ourselves in our own internal voice, in our own center, in our own groundedness, and as you mentioned, your passion, your purpose, that is not something anyone or any technology can take away or replace.
Right.
They never, you can't, as long as you preserve it. Because
Right.
if you do become so distracted and we have all these voices and things on us, then you actually might lose that. And remember that you have a spark, you have a purpose, you do have a meaning of being here. And we're kind of getting a little close to people forgetting that. So as long as you keep that spark alive, and the rest of us all together are helping each other to remember that, I think everyone will be not just okay,
Abs-
they'll thrive.
Absolutely. And like this is the best advice. Like if I would ask you like what you would tell, the fellow builders, so this is the best advice you would give, because I think we need, what I liked, Sam, about your way of thinking, and the way you put things and the way you have organized not only the book, like even I've seen like some of your speeches. So it's like you spark this optimism, because I'm too much into optimism, and I'm too much into encouraging people to ignore. When I said ignore the noise, not necessarily notifications. So sometimes we have these voices that keep scaring people of what's happening. So it's good, like you mentioned this. Now I wish like we could continue, but I'm conscious of time for you also, Sam. If you want to leave the audience with like final thoughts and where they can get in touch, and maybe um you know follow for the next book also as well. So please, let us know.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm Sam Rad again, Sam Rad official across all the online social networks. My book is called Radical Next, Reclaiming Your Humanity in a Post-Human World. And you can Google that, Google me. It's on Amazon. Would love to hear your feedback and to stay in touch for the next book. And as a final thought, I think I already left it, which is, it's so important in this moment in time to reconnect to ourselves, to each other, to our internal belief systems, our communities, our planet. So I think staying true to that course and being present and being authentic, and you'll thrive.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of authenticity, Sam, also myself as well. And I think this is a really thought-provoking episode. At least for me, I enjoyed the discussion. For the audience, you don't need to go and Google anything. I'm gonna make the life easy. All the links will be in the show notes if you're listening on your favorite podcasting app. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're gonna find it also in the description. So Sam, I really, really, really thank you very much for sharing your experience, sharing your thoughts with us. And I hope that someone who would listen, would go back and think about their purpose, about like the opportunity or opportunities ahead of us. So thank you very much for this. And this is for the audience. This is how usually I end my episodes. So if you just discovered this podcast, and I'm happy that people are discovering it more than before. So thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed. If you did so, please subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who are now like big community for me, like big supporters, thank you very much. I really appreciate all the support you give me. I appreciate all the feedbacks. The most thing that I'm appreciating nowadays, that the first time, and I'm new to this podcasting thing, is after 2 years, now we are entering the top 200 podcast charts on Apple Podcasts in multiple countries simultaneously. So this is something unseen. 2025 is very good for us. So thank you very much for your support, and keep your questions, your suggestions coming. I read all of them. Thank you very much. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.